Thank you. So the name of this talk is There's Only One Mind. And how can we create with this? How can we use this mind to create a life of love, joy, harmony, peace? Does this sound like something you might be interested in?
Yes.
Good. Let me tell you how I came upon this topic. So as Reverend Rita did that beautiful introduction, as she said part of this, but I was first introduced to New Thought teachings by attending a Sunday service, actually for gathering. And I heard the wonderful Margaret Pelagi, and her talk just resonated with me. And after that talk, I wanted to learn more about science of mind, New Thought, and Ernest Holmes. So in delving into that, I learned that Ernest Holmes was an American New Thought writer, teacher, leader, and the founder of religious science, which is part of the greater New Thought movement. I discovered that this spiritual philosophy and faith and way of life is known as the science of mind. And as I attended more services, I enjoyed hearing and reading some of these concepts. For instance, the highest God and the innermost God is one God. And I enjoyed hearing at the core of each human being is the original creative genius of the universe. I found it, and still do, so reassuring to learn about the belief that there's no separation of God and myself, but rather a complete unity between the two of us. However, everything was not crystal clear to me when I first started learning about New Thought. For instance, I heard the word law a lot, and I heard about us putting words into the law, and they would be manifested. I heard about love and law, and it was a little confusing for me. I don't know if anyone else, when they first started hearing these teachings and principles, were a little confused. But then eventually I found out that it was a spiritual law and not a human law, and that made more sense. But let me tell you the one that was the hardest principle for me to interpret and to understand for a really long time. That all life, here it is, all life was using the one mind. Now I knew mind was important in New Thought because Ernest Holmes wrote the book called Science of Mind. And in this text he wrote, mind is. Shortest sentence I ever heard. Mind is. Mind is both universal and individual. The mind which is personified is the same mind that is universal. So let's delve into the spiritual belief that there is one mind. This mind is both the mind of man and the mind of God. So there's only one mind. Why was it the hardest spiritual principle for me to understand and interpret? I think it was because I'm a very visual person. And when I first started pursuing New Thought teachings, I heard there was one mind. But then I also heard there was universal mind and individual mind. Like, wait a minute, I thought there was only one mind, and it was very confusing. So then my challenge was understanding about the one mind. Like I said, I'm a very visual person. So what I started imagining was this huge, colossal brain that was in the sky. And then if we were all using it, all I could imagine were all these thinking bubbles that were all coming down. Each one of us had our thinking bubbles. And that was a lot of thinking bubbles I was imagining, because the last time I checked, the population of our planet was like 7.7 billion people. So I thought, wow, that is a lot of thinking bubbles. How are we all doing this? But then I pulled myself in and remembered that mind is not even physical. So how could I be imagining it? And then that became a little challenging because it's a little tricky to imagine something that's invisible. So I was still on my quest of the one mind. I really wanted to understand it. So I went to this little book that's out there called the New Thought Dictionary. And I looked there I looked in there, and in there was the phrase, only one mind. And the definition was, the mind that we use in thinking at any time is the mind of God in us. I was like, that makes sense. But then I also went to Science of Mind, the text that Ernest Holmes wrote, and in the glossary in the back, I found the word mind, and there's all these little phrases underneath, and of course I found only one mind, and this is what it said. There's no such thing as your mind and my mind and God's mind. There's only mind in which we all live and move and have our being. Now, where did Holmes get that last part? Live and move and have our being. He got it right from the Bible in Acts 17:28, in which Paul writes, "For in him," referring to God, "for in him we live and move and have our being. As some of our own poets have said, we are his offspring." So then I began to wonder, how are all of God's offspring having access to this one mind? So I went back to Science of Mind, and there was a part that helped to clarify this for me, and I'm quoting Holmes here. "We should have faith that there is but one mind. This mind is both the mind of man and the mind of God. We use this mind of God since there is but one mind. This mind is the essence of creativeness, the essence of goodness. It is available to all. It has already incarnated through all. It is in all and through all," Holmes wrote. And then, of course, I didn't stop. I went to the other book, one of the many other books that he wrote. And in Living the Science of Mind, on page 61, Holmes wrote, "There is a spiritual center in everything. The principle of mind or spirit governs everything and can well be called the Christ consciousness. However, it could just as well have been called the Buddhic consciousness or the Tao, which means the way." So let's just take in a big breath here. This is a lot of information. And I'll continue on my quest. And it gets even better. In the book, Love and Law, Holmes states, now I'm going to read this slowly. It is so good, so take this in. "The same mind that is in us is in the universe. The same mind, no difference. We know we have a creative mind within us, which will receive the impress of our thought. Our creative mind is our share of the universal creative mind. And whatever is true about you is universally true. And whatever is universally true must be true about you." And he continues, "Now this mind is infinite intelligence, infinite creative power, and receptivity. This mind receives the impress of our thought, like the soil received a seed and reproduces it." End quote. So after reading all of these passages, I really began to have an understanding of the one mind, finally. But this passage was what made everything crystal clear for me, the one that I'm about to read to you. And it is found right on page 1 of Living the Science of Mind. Right there on the first page where all the very pertinent information belongs. And this is what it said. "The science of mind is built on the theory that there is one infinite mind, which of necessity includes all that is, whether it be the intelligence in man, the life in the animal, or the invisible presence which is God. In it, we learn to have a spiritual sense of things. This spiritual sense of things is what is meant by the consciousness of Christ. Oh, so let's just take a few more breaths. This is good, deep stuff. It's great to breathe it in, because that was a lot of information, but so worth it, I think. And in Science of Mind, Holmes also writes, the mind of man is an extension of the eternal mind or spirit. And his evolution is the unfolding of this everlasting mind or spirit through his thought. End quote. So now that I finally have this understanding and awareness of the one mind, of course I was curious about something else. What can we do within this one mind? If it's all incarnated in each of us, what can we do with it? We know that mind is creative and intelligent, and in turn, we know that we are creative and intelligent thinking beings. We can use this creativity and intelligence through thought. We were all born as creative beings to be creative. We were not born to be cookie cutters of each other. God created us to use this creative outlet, creating our lives to be well-lived and full of love. So through the one mind, we're given free will and freedom and so much. And this enables us to co-create a life with our Creator. Now remember, we cannot do this alone, and we cannot do it without our Creator. We can all, each and every one of us, can create a life that we love using the one mind. But before we get deeper into this, I'd like to take a look at the metaphysical chart as a visual of how creative thought is brought to fruition. So our symbol here at Joyful Gathering is based on the metaphysical chart. It's a circle, and it's divided into 3 parts, as you can see right here. And then we have our beautiful people celebrating. But I also made a smaller model for us to look at. I don't expect you to read it, don't worry, but to be able to see the circle, and that it's divided into 3 parts. Now remember, this is it's a representation, it's a diagram of how the creative process works. So at the top of the circle, it represents God, Spirit, First Cause, the Great I Am, all the attributes of Spirit that are self-conscious, such as the self-conscious mind of God, meaning it is conscious of itself. And we sometimes refer to this as the seed section up here on the top. Now we're going to look at the middle section. This part represents where the creative medium or soil is. It also contains the subconscious mind, that is the creative medium or the universal mind. Now this creates what is placed into it, just like soil. So if it were to receive a carrot seed, it would produce a carrot plant. A zinnia seed, a zinnia plant. As the creative medium here, it gives form to whatever is placed into it. It has no conscious mind of its own, but it receives all the ideas placed into it and then tends to create a form around them. It does not choose, this middle part here does not choose what to produce, but it produces what is placed into it as the creative medium. And so I want to stay on this part a little bit longer in the middle. As the universal law of mind, it cannot analyze, dissect, or deny what is placed into it. Because of its nature, it must always accept and act. And at once, it begins to create a likeness of the pattern or the thought given it. This universal mind receives and acts. It's not a knower, as Spirit is up here, but it is a doer of the will of Spirit. It knows only to do without knowing why. It's a doer or an executor of the will of Spirit. And lastly, this lower section shows the effect or the manifestation of universal mind. So if we were to think about the seed, the soil, this would be where the plant is, or the effect or the manifestation of what is placed in the universal mind. Okay, are you still with me? Yes. All right, let's take another breath. So we know thought is creative, and referring back to the middle part of the diagram, this creative medium is bringing to fruition what thoughts I personally place into it. What do I want to think about? And what do I want in my life? What do I want this universal medium, this mind, to create for me? I can be an active participant in co-creating my life with our divine creator. And each and every person is a participant as a co-creator of your life. And once you are aware of this magnificent process and the power of it, it can be so reassuring to truly know that we play a part in creating our lives. Holmes assures us of this when he writes, "We do not create laws and principles, but we discover and make use of them." Just like electricity. We did not create that, but rather we discovered it and we use it. It's the same type of thing. This creative process all starts with love. And why do I say love? Because love is right at the very top. It's God. It's the macrocosm, the eternal one, the divine, conscious mind, the original, all-knowing, the absolute, the great I am, and Spirit, and so many more beautiful names. And before I place this down, I want to tell you that many people feel that we should not put solid lines between these, that there should be more like dotted lines between each of these, because this is a very fluid process. So I just wanted to mention that, but this is a very small copy of the metaphysical chart. It's great to look at, to visualize, if you're a visual person like I am. So this process, so now that we know the process and the power of it, and how to co-create our life with spirit and mind, let's look at 3 ways that we can make our lives even more expansive. So the first one, first and foremost, know that God only wants good for you in your life. Start with this truthful thought: God wants only good for me. So repeat after me, please. God wants only good for me. Yeah, it feels so reassuring to say that. And then here's a loving affirmation from American spiritual teacher Ram Dass. This is what he said. Yeah, we love him. You are loved just for being who you are, just for existing. That's his quote. And I'm going to repeat it again. You are loved just for being who you are, just for existing. And I want to try something. I'm going to change the you to I. I am loved just for being who I am, just for existing. So would you repeat after me, please? I am loved just for being who I am, just for existing. Doesn't that feel good to say and to hear? And it affirms God's love for us. And by placing these words and thoughts into the creative medium of mind, you will manifest a more loving atmosphere around yourself and everyone around you. So now I'm going to go back to the original quote that Ram Dass said. You are loved just for being who you are, just for existing. And I'm going to ask you to turn to 1 or 2 people and say that to them. You are loved just for being who you are, just for existing. So you just placed these loving thoughts right into the creative medium of universal mind. And we know this will manifest into more love surrounding you and surrounding others. Thoughts have a rippling effect out. Your thoughts are powerful. Ask yourself and have an awareness. What do I want to send out into the universal mind? So that's the first way you can use this beautiful creative process. Now here's a second way that we have the power to co-create our lives. In the text, Living the Science of Mind, we have our spiritual principles listed in there. So in the text, Living the Science of Mind, under the section, What We Believe, all the 13 spiritual principles are there. And I chose one of them to base this talk on, and this is the principle that I chose. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. Beautiful. So we know we're creative beings since we are surrounded by this creative mind, and we have the ability to co-create our life with God by the direct impress of our thoughts. And then it's all set into motion by Spirit and their whole process all over again. So I'm just going to pull this out just as a quick reminder. So I'm looking at the metaphysical chart again, and this time, let's look at the bottom part first. Because remember, this is the part that shows the effect or the manifestation. So if you want something in your life, think about what it is you want in your life. And then you can place and go all through that process. And then, so what I'm thinking is just something general, like say there's something you want to do that you might consider brave. It's just something that you want to do. But you have some fear based around it, or whatever thoughts you have based around it that you think you can't do it. Start with brave thoughts, knowing that you, whatever it is, with your unity of God, and just know that your way will be paved before you. So placing those thoughts of whatever it is you want to do, and just knowing that you will be able to do it through this universal creative process of law. And I do enjoy sometimes looking at going from bottom and then going this way sometimes as well, just knowing what is it that I want? What do I want in my life? What do I want to enrich? What is it I might want more of? So it works that way. And just a general thoughts of gratitude and love will always bring more peaceful, joyous, and harmonious outcomes and move us forward in a life that we live. But, there always has to be a but. But, what if we're not putting those kinds of affirmative, positive thoughts into this creative process? What if we might be putting something like thoughts of lack or limitation, thoughts of like, I can't, I'll never, this will never change, into this whole process? Thoughts such as, I'll never have enough blank. If that's what you're thinking, you certainly will manifest that. You won't have enough. Or what about saying, I'll never be able to do blank, whatever it is. That's exactly what you will manifest, because remember, this universal mind creates whatever is placed into it. It doesn't judge it, it just places it in, and that's what you will create. So, think of what you are placing into the universal mind. And Maya Angelou reminds us, your life is already a miracle of chance waiting for you to shape its destiny. I'll say that again. Your life is already a miracle chance waiting for you to shape its destiny. Remember how the creative process works. Your thoughts and your actions will direct the mind to co-create your life with God. And there's a third way that we can co-create our life with Spirit. Recognize your unity with all life. After reading and searching all that I did, I really came to the knowing, not even a thinking, a knowing, that we are all one. It was really solidified for me. Since we're all of the one mind, we're all interconnected. We're created of the same mind, God's mind. We are more alike than different. Feeling that sense of connectiveness with all life gives me a sense of peace and harmony and healthy feelings. And when I breathe that in, knowing that connection and unity with all life, and knowing, as we said before, that God only wants good for us. So I want to try something together. I want you to think of a peaceful thought, connecting you to all humans, animals, nature, all of life. So why don't we try this? Let's close our eyes and think thoughts of peace, thoughts of harmony, connection to all life. Maybe you're even visualizing a place where you feel peace. Maybe the woods or the beach. Maybe it's your own backyard, a park bench. Surround yourself by loving people and animals, and truly feel it. Feel this peace in your body. Feel it radiating all throughout your body. Feel it in your heart. Breathe it in. Maybe even placing your hand over your heart. And just breathe in these peaceful thoughts. And just one more breath in and out. And I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and return back to the room, even though you may not want to right now. So I don't know about you, but I feel such an inner peace. I feel my heart is beating slower. And I feel more connected to all life. Does anybody else have that same feeling out there? I see a lot of heads shaking. So just by thinking these peaceful thoughts, without actually being at any one of these places that you may have imagined, you were able to create an atmosphere of peace. And all of your thoughts, as we said earlier, have a rippling effect out into the world. We know that this creative medium of mind is creating this right now for you and all of life. Your thoughts just directed it to. And I have to thank you, because I am benefiting from all of that up here. So thank you so much. And I'm grateful for you for placing thoughts of peace and harmony that I know will manifest into greater peace, harmony, and unity of all life for yourself and others. So hopefully I've given you some food for thought about mind, the one mind, how we can use it for our highest potential, how we do co-create our lives with our Creator through the universal creative process. And there's 3 things I would like you to take away. The first one, God only wants good for you. And the second one, we have the power to co-create our lives with Spirit because we are powerful, creative, thinking beings. There is a universal law of mind that we create with. And the third way, recognize your unity with all life, for you are never alone, and you can create greater good for yourself and for all. And remember, your thoughts are powerful as you place them into the one universal mind that we all use and we're all part of. So I can't wait to see what we each co-create in our life as powerful, creative beings. Thank you.